So you were hired to shut down a key financial relay server of the Department of Economic Stability and Relocation, DESR. People call it the bottom line for a reason. So what happens is if your credits drop too low below for about 72 hours, you get flagged. And once you're flagged, the drones just show up. You're dragged out. Maybe you're thrown into a labor reassignment camp. Maybe you're just thrown into the abyss, and that's it. But you are now into the vault of this place, and it's in flames. You did it, and now you have to get out of there. Okay? There's only one service tunnel that was left like unsealed. The lift is jammed. You hear drones in the distance, and you see like 5 military goons approaching your way. You have seconds, but you just pulled something kind of like impossible. So what do you do now? That's the scene.
I think first we probably look at each other, and the camera zooms in on us, so we get a nice sense of there's 2 people standing in the hall about to fight these 5 goons. One of them is
who do we see?
One of them is a tall, middle-aged lady with different bluish veins of wires running down her cheeks and on threaded through her hands. And she has a sort of ethereal, like her eyes are kind of sunken, almost like she's just a little too kind of lean and doesn't really look old, but just weathered, almost inhumanly. And she is kind of invisibly always tapping her fingers, almost like searching for something that's not quite there, establishing a connection. But she looks at her partner in crime here, and what does she see, Chris?
She sees a 6'8", really jacked, androgynous person wearing kind of like magical girl outfit, but it's made out of like interlocking ceramite panels. So I don't know how to better explain it, but it's basically like Sailor Moon, but made of ceramite, like like bulletproof panels. They are, like I said, they're real big, they're real jacked. They've got kind of like chin length, bright pink hair, and I don't know actually what gear they have on quite yet, because I believe that we decide that later, but maybe preemptively. Well, we're on the run right now, right? So on their back is a large rifle that is kind of slung across their shoulders. It looks like it shoots like photons or something appropriately cyberpunk and sci-fi for the setting. You see we'll call them Emra. You see Emra, the specialist, the shifter runner.
And Emra is being looked at unsteadily by a very wary Kaya Parcher, and Kaya is a jacker. She's here to connect, and she does not have any weapons. She definitely has 2 things. I'm going to say she has the special grenade, regardless of what that means, Raffi. She has a special grenade because I love grenades, and she is smoking an info cigarette, which is a thing I just made up, but it's a cigarette with data that fucks you up a little, just a little buzz. So yeah, now we're gonna, I guess, try to get past these goons. So Emra and Kaya are in the hall, and we have, thankfully, a bunch of special powers that we, the players, Chris and Wythe, don't know how to use. So Raffi, what happens?
We love that. So yeah, the goons are coming away. So the tunnel is behind you. So you've got a choice. You can go face the goons. You can go check that tunnel. But they are military, so they are elite over here level. And I would say at this point where you are right now, I'm gonna set the threat level and effect as soon as you tell me what the goal of your action is going to be. You tell me.
Okay.
What do you think, Chris?
I think the two of us as kind of mercs, as runners, looking down this hallway at all of these militarized goons. I think Emra would probably turn to you and like nod their head and jerk their head down the tunnel, kind of trying to communicate that we should definitely flee, but that I'm gonna give us some covering fire as we're retreating back from these goons to try to hold them back.
Do you want me to
they
throw
unsling their rifle?
Do you want me to use this special grenade and find out what it does finally? I've been wondering.
There's no time like the present. That's how Emra talks.
I love it. Actually, y'all just created, and I'll give you my suggestion here. There's mechanics that we play tested a lot that I think is a lot of fun to just like encourage teamwork. It's called sync. It's essentially like when two runners just share exactly the moment that you just described the thing to a T. Like you didn't even have to necessarily say the thing. You both just like knew what was going to happen, right? That bond essentially was created. You didn't even have to communicate it. You were like, and then you just know what's going to happen. So whenever you can do like an action where you both like can support each other in the same scene, you can either like boost the effect of your action, or you can reduce the cost of an action that, for example, might cost you stress, right? So say one of your actions right now if you want to like shift, you're going to have to spend stress. If you want to ghost jack more than one goon, you're going to spend stress for each of the goons. So you can do that for free if you're in sync.
Gotcha.
Oh, very cool.
So you can either boost or you can do things for free. What do you think you might want to do? Because you said you want to throw a grenade, maybe. That's fine.
Yeah, I think as we like run down the hallway, Wythe, what was your character's name again?
Kaya Parcher.
Kaya. Maybe Kaya, you throw the grenade over your shoulder as like Emra's kind of running backwards and like laying down the covering fire to try to keep the goons back. Does that sound
okay? Yeah.
true?
So that sounds like an increased effect then, rather than trying to reduce cost of an action, because you're really not spending any stress on this,
Sure, yeah.
Yeah. So I would say this scene was probably going to be like in a standard threat and standard effect, but because you use sync, you have increased effect. So you have actually effect 3 on that. So let's roll for that throw of the grenade in there, and let's roll for that fire, and you tell me your results, and then we'll see what happens.
So what do we roll?
What are we rolling, Raffi?
Okay, so you're throwing something, right? So let's look at your skills. For your skills, Kyle, let me pull up the shifter here. Lucky for you, right? Range combat is a 2.
That's Emra has 2, I think. I have 0 in range.
Yeah, you're the ghost.
Yeah, I have 2 in ranged combat as the shifter.
I figure I'll try jacking in later. I was just going to do something dumb to see if we could get further away, and maybe there's even another threat. I don't know, but we'll see how well it goes.
I love it even more. Okay, so for Kaya, what kind of approach are you using? You pick your approach first. That's definitely not empathetic. Definitely not stealthy, right?
I mean, I'd rather be, I guess, smart than aggressive, and that I'm not necessarily trying to kill them as much as just get away. So I'm trying to do whatever will cause, create distance between us, is my thinking.
Yeah. So, cool. So you have 1 dice. Good luck.
Okay, great.
But you have increased effect. So that's cool. You can push yourself if you want, actually, for an extra die.
I'm just going to roll 1 die, but then so can you tell us what happens? Like, what am I trying to get on the die, and sort of what is the... Yeah.
You usually want to get at least a 4, because that's a partial success. A 5 is a partial success, and a 6 is a full success. Anything below that is a failure.
Great. Okay, so I'm rolling 1 die, trying to get a 4, 5, or 6. Okay. That's a 2.
Yay! We love that. Okay. So Chris, you doing the covering fire though, right? So
Yes.
now all is lost. Let's do this in parallel. Tell me how you doing that.
I think so. For those listening at home, there's not like a standard list of approaches, right? It's kind of something that you pick in the moment. Did I read that correctly?
You have 4 approaches: aggressive, empathetic, smart, and stealthy. So you do have to pick one of those, and then plus your skills. That's how you create your dice pool.
Gotcha. I think I'm going to use smart plus my ranged combat skill.
That sounds good to me.
And was really looking down the scope, trying to pick their shots very carefully, even as they're kind of jostling, moving backwards.
Yeah. How many dice are that then?
That's a good question. I believe is that 3?
Let's see. Oh, you have 0 in smart, actually.
Oh, I have 0 in smart. Oh, I see that now. Well, we'll still do 2, I think.
2 range combat, yeah.
All right. Not the brightest, but they're trying their best.
Yeah.
I got a 4.
You got a 4?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, so that's the highest number. That's a partial success. Okay.
Nice.
All right. So how do we do this together? Let's imagine this. Okay. So for Kaya, you tell me if this sounds fair. Okay. If not, you tell me what sounds fair. But I imagine you threw your special grenade, and holy behold, you know what special thing it did, right? Yep. You have any ideas of what it?
Yeah. I think it's like a summary version. It's maybe call it a blip. Yeah, a blip storm grenade. It's like a ghost jacking that's not meant to really be that long or effective, but just kind of like mess with people, like futz with their minds, so it like quickly connects to everyone really quickly, and it's supposed to confuse them. Like basically it's a really good stun grenade. Obviously I've used it wrong in my haste, and I'm actually not good at throwing, so I probably just dropped it on the floor right in front of me.
Yep, I'm gonna say that sounds good to me. Can I, because it was a failure, okay, let's leave it to that. You nothing happened to you. You got the cover. It was a partial cover, however, because it was a partial success. Does it sound fair to both of you that some of those, reaction shots, because this is happening in real time, they're shooting at you, you're shooting, each other at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe because Kaya was throwing the grenade in there and she just confused herself. I think you might have gotten a little harm in there, Kai. I'm sorry. I think you got a shot.
You don't have to apologize to me. It's this is how these runs work, right?
The cops shoot level back. 1 harm.
That's heist, baby.
You got a level 1 harm. You can't
resist
it. You can try to resist it.
Okay.
Really do that.
How does that work?
Okay. A few ways. You can tell me, hey, I actually had armor on my gear, and you can mark that. Or
No, I don't think I would have armor. That seems very out of character. But
that seems out. Okay. So then you're just gonna pick an approach about like how you're gonna like brace for this thing. Like maybe you're bracing it like aggressively, or or maybe you're trying to be smart about it. It's like, I don't know, I'm doing some moves here or something. And then you're just gonna roll the approach, and you tell me the results.
Okay.
And how much stress.
Sure. I'm going to say I'm using stealthy as the approach because I know how informatically, I think I got too high on my own supply with the info cigarettes. So I was lost in the data. And then when the blip storm happened, I was like, oh, fuck. But I know what's happening. Like I programmed the blip storm grenade. So as these kind of weird, like, I'll call them soul caches, like bits of human souls that have been digitized are coming at me. I know where they're going. So I'm going to use stealthy because I can kind of just hide from them, like mentally turn sideways. So I'm just going to roll 1 die for stealthy.
I love that.
And I got a 6. Yeah.
Oh,
It's a 6
amazing.
die.
Nice.
So when you're like trying to brace for something, you always resist the thing, but you do get stress in return. But you only got one stress, which is great.
Okay.
You roll the 6.
So I mark 1 stress.
You mark 1 stress.
Okay. And
you
we started with some stress. So I don't know if that's typical or if you want to tell us like that's, every character starts the run with some amount of stress or.
Yeah, no, that's not usually typical. Although I have created some runs where the thing is so stressful that I'm like, you're starting stressed, but it's not a typical thing. I just mark stress because you are in the escape, right?
We already did a bunch of things. That makes total sense to me.
Yeah.
Cool. So I'm still in the gray flashback part, or I guess, sorry, that's a separate line. So I'm just in the gray part. I don't know what happens when it gets all the way up to the pink part. That seems bad to tick that last back. But
fun things happen.
Fun things, great.
Things.
Yeah. So what is the next move?
So they're still after us, right? Like we're partially down the hall, but they're on our tail.
You unfortunately didn't do any damage to them at this point. But you're there. You confuse yourselves a little bit.
I think I would ghost. Well, what do you think, Chris? Yeah, before I say something.
Well, I was gonna maybe see about doing some shifting to beat these suckers back. But what are you thinking?
I was gonna try to ghost jack and see if I can grab their minds and have them shoot at each other, which maybe wouldn't be antithetical to what you're doing, because you would help you. You'd know that you only have to attack some of them, maybe. So I'd hope that would
great.
help the combat, the melee.
I love.
Once again, we share a look.
Condor strategy.
Imagine we have some kind of like, cybernetic comm system that you can just like trigger by thinking of the other person or something like that, So like we're having this conversation in real time as all this shit is happening.
It's all emoji. It's like using Line or whatever. It like makes you happy emoji. Yeah. So it's like an animated squirrel being like, "Fuck them up," like on your eye.
Yeah.
I love it. Yeah, that sounds great to me. Okay, so Kaya, how do you think Kaya, gets into that zone of like, okay, now I'm doing this?
I mean, I assume I use the Oracle's Eye, my cybernetic augmentation that connects to the network and has multiple vision modes. So my eyes go pure white and I can see into the kind of soul network between us. And I think I would use, if possible, empathetic. I assume that's how the Ghost Jacker kind of works. That seems like my main sort of stat, my main approach. So I would hope that counts. I don't know if like influence counts as a skill or anything else. I'm not familiar enough if using the special move of being a Ghost Jacker is, has another mechanic, or if it's similar to the other more basic moves. Like I just narrate it and explain the dice that I'm rolling.
Yeah. So actually the weird activations usually work in the same way as activating an augmentation would, which means you mark stress to like activate it. And if you are doing something more complex, then I would think, okay, maybe I'll make you do a roll for it, right? So are you doing just one person? Are you going to do multiple? What's your goal?
I guess I'll have one. I'd like to take over one person and have them kind of just jump, like kind of not even trying to kill, but just knock down everybody else, like a real, Keystone Cops situation.
Hell yeah. Okay. Yeah. So you mark one stress to activate your power because you're doing a magical thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And let's make you do a roll for that. Let's make you, I think the influence part, I think that's why I gave you some influence skills in there. That makes sense.
So maybe empathy and so empathetic approach plus influence. So I get 3 dice total.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Let me see what I get. I got a 4, a 3, and a 5.
Oh, so awesome. Okay, so we always count the highest result. The highest result was a 5.
Okay.
I love that. Okay, so describe to me how you entered this person and what are you doing with this person? And then maybe we'll come up with a consequence for that.
Sure. Well, while Emra is like, is dropping and maybe goes to a knee or whatever it looks like, Chris, when Emra's like about to unleash or spring forward, I use the Oracle Eye, and I think I look like classic movie monster, like hands out, eyes white, very like Dune android style. And flipping through the Rolodex of all the souls nearby, I've connected, jacked into their minds, and the one of them who's weakest, who's totally thinking about something else right now, like the date they're going to go on later, as they're like grabbing, a future ceramic submachine gun with like self-propelled bullets or something. I jack in and grab like the base of his spine, and he just instead of like shooting up at us, just kind of randomly is shooting to the side and like not at anyone, just at the wall, and just running like full on fullback style at the rest of the squad.
Love that. Yeah. I mean, it was, it was a success. You got in, now you have control over this person. So you don't have to worry about that. But yeah, maybe they didn't really shoot their, their other goons. Maybe they're just under your control for now, which is still really good. All right. And the supporting move there.
Yeah. So as the non-mind controlled goons kind of like reel back as their ally turns on them and starts kind of opening fire at them, if maybe it's like a spray and pray kind of thing, not really hitting, but in that moment of hesitation, Imra gets down on her or on their knee. Sorry, I use this name for like 1,000 different characters just because I like it. So I'm getting different character versions of this name mixed in my mind. But Imra drops down on their knee and removes one of their ceramite gloves. And you see that their flesh starts to kind of roil as though the bones and the internal structure is kind of liquefying, turning into a kind of like I'm just imagining Tetsuo from Akira, right? Like the like mixture of like cybernetics, but also just like pure body horror flesh. And Imra basically shoots out their hand, and it morphs. The density and the scale morphs, and it turns into basically like a giant flesh net to attempt to pin down all of these goons. Yep.
Fantastic. So I'm assuming this is gonna be okay. So you mark 1 stress for your incredible. Oh God, that was amazing. If we were doing this in a longer campaign, I would give you some rep points just because it's like you get extra rep for iconic cinematic moves.
Oh, nice.
You got those. Like it's done. So ranged combat, it seems, right?
Yes, yeah. I was gonna say for the approach it would be aggressive, and then using ranged combat as the base action for sure.
Love that. Okay.
So I believe I have 2 marked in aggressive and 2 in ranged combat. So does that give me 4 die after marking stress?
Yep.
Oh, all right. So I got a 5 in there.
Awesome. That's a partial success. That's still really good. All right. And your goal was to like get all of them, or
right? Just kind of like literally casting a wide net made of flesh, and trying just to like I guess like knock them all over to create an opportunity to kind of escape.
Yeah. Okay. So we're gonna make this dramatic because we gotta kind of make some conclusion over here. So I'm gonna say you got all of them. But before you could fully restrain one of them, you see that they threw this like grenade at y'all, and now it's time to like do something. In like few seconds it got left, and may I suggest something?
Yeah, please.
Okay, cool. We can do something cool now. We can do some like flashback moment, perhaps. It's a cool mechanic. Essentially, it's like you say, hey, we already prepared for this thing in advance, aka your escape plan. Maybe you want to think about, how you kind of prepare that. So you spend the stress to do the flashback. And maybe this is the moment where you're like, okay, we have this grenade coming, but we actually prepared escape route on this thing that was going to happen in advance. So we're going to be good. That
I have
makes
an
sense?
idea for this.
Okay.
Yeah.
All
I've
right.
got an idea for this. And I'm happy to mark the stress for the flashback, which I can
Love
do.
it.
So one of the things that I marked on my gear in my inventory, I have a load of 3, so I chose 3 items, and one of them is a small drone. So I imagine that we, in this flashback, it's like a VHS tape, and you see before we up our target, before we like really got going on this heist, right at the very beginning, Emra presses a button on like a little screen that they have on their wrist, and you see this tiny little like 3-inch by 3-inch drone kind of fly out of their off of their back. And then the drone goes down this hallway, the very hallway that we're in, and you see like, doing the movie scan line thing all up and down the hallway, trying to find every point of egress. And just having like a map of points where we can escape. And then I think maybe we're standing over one of those points.
Yeah.
Yes. I love that. So let's say that's what happens. You're standing right onto that point of exit. The vault fully explodes in flames, but you were at the right time, at the right place. You already prepared for that thing. The Department of Economic Stability and Relocation is going to have a lot of trouble trying to rebuild back up. So you may have not stopped it. And this would be a moment where we would do like a full epilogue part, that also is dependent on like your reps or like debts. You have to certain roles for it to kind of determine how successful it was, not just for you, but like for the people affected by it as well. Which
cool.
It's also, one of the new things that we put it in there, because it's just like, okay, it's not just about you, it's also about how it affects
Right.
Yeah.
Point of it for the community.
Yeah, the odds around you. But we're gonna say for now, you've given them a lot of trouble, and we hope that they take a long time to rebuild.
Awesome.
Hell yeah, that felt great.
Yeah. Well, very excited to do more echoing through the veil, which is a very natural way to turn to the title of the game we were just playing.
I said the thing.
Yeah. Before we go any further, it's like the moment in Star Wars when Luke turns to the camera and is like, "Can't we stop all these Star Wars?" And everyone like nods solemnly. Yeah.
Everyone nods solemnly.
Yeah. So before we go any further, we should probably introduce the designer of the game. The reason that we're here is to do interviews and talk about game design. So Raffi, can you introduce yourself? Can you tell us who you are, and maybe even mention the game, whatever you want. But what brings you to Why We Roll and cyberpunk game design?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Raffi. They them pronouns. I am a designer, an illustrator, and before I got into game designing, I still do graphic design, and I've done it for about 15 years now. And I got really fascinated and kind of obsessed about the intersections of design and social justice. So I kind of forged a niche of path. And I do this a lot. I tend to carve my own paths quite a bit because I like niche things and things that are kind of specialized. I thought, well, you know what? I want to keep playing games that represent the types of world that I imagine. And that's sort of how I started gravitating towards those communities and those games, and cyberpunk genre was the game that kind of got me very excited about it, because I think, in my opinion, it's one of those genres that, if you're not playing it in a political way, you're probably not playing it well, or it's just you're not playing it. You're playing it wrong. I'm sorry.
You ain't playing it right.
Like, listen, it's just like, how do you justify that?
Yeah, it's a more extreme case. It's like if you're playing OD&D and you're murdering all the goblins, you're doing goblin exterminationism. Or if you're playing a Western fantasy game and you're like, let's build up this frontier town by driving the natives off their land. It's like, you're doing it wrong. You're not at all thinking about the genre and problems of the genre in our wider culture. So I agree. If you're in cyberpunk and it's not related to money and politics and communities, it's like
class
and just like, what is it? It would be the same as doing cyberpunk and there's no technology. It's like, what is it then? Is it the same thing?
Exactly, right? Exactly. And I'm here because, like I said, I've gravitated towards community that shared that perspective with me, leftist perspective, radical perspective, that want to build a better world and want that in their games. So yeah, I'm very excited to be here. Yeah.
Sick. Well, yeah. I mean, Chris, do you? I have so many questions, but do you have questions for Raffi as well? Since we sort of just dove in with that nice cold open, so thank you for that.
I do, but why don't you just go ahead and ask some questions? I'll weave in.
Well, now that we know, Raffi, who you are, I think, one question we always like to ask on the show is, how did you get involved with games in general? What, are there early tabletop experiences or other game experiences, storytelling experiences? You mentioned being a graphic designer, and that's very evident if someone takes a look at Echoes of the Veil, which is the game, and it is on Kickstarter right now as of this taping. So, I definitely think it's worth checking out, alone just for kind of a refreshing, very beautiful, colorful look and take, and some cool, wording, some nice vocabulary, bringing, into the world of cyberpunk, some new fresh elements, but still maintaining definitely a cyberpunk, core. But yeah, how did you come to games in general, and what games, are you starting from Shadowrun, cyberpunk, or, D&D? Like, well, I don't know, like how'd you find yourself here where you're publishing a game?
Yeah, actually, D&D, believe it or not, as my cousin was a GM, and we have about 8 years apart, growing up. So we were kind of like each other's siblings. And he would run, campaigns with his friends, and he would always be like, hey, you can't play the game because I am with my friends, and I was like little, but I would always like stay there and just observe. So that got me into the idea of like role playing, and I think like as a neurodivergent person, as a queer person, as so many of my other identities, role playing I think plays a really important role just for me in general. As someone who feels they have to, navigate a way in like 300 different ways sometimes in order to, accomplish certain things. So I think that just like spoke to me like really like deeply and personally, even though, I didn't have that awareness, obviously, as a kid. So yeah. Does that resonate at all, or?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I was gonna say, I think, for a lot of people, just like even the concept of just feeling your own autonomy through having a character is such a powerful thing, right? And like you're saying, like, there's so much identity to navigate in the world. So, and often it feels like it's not something that we're allowed to navigate ourselves. So yeah, being able to create a character and have that autonomy, it's also something that I think a lot of us feel drawn to in TTRPGs.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, obviously, I'm not gonna say I grew out of D&D because I still appreciate D&D,
Sure.
but just like as soon as I started like exploring other systems, particularly systems where I don't have to roll for every single thing. And I was just like, D&D is like, you investigate, you roll. I want to jump that, you roll. It's just like, it's a little bit tiring for me. And you mentioned Shadowrun. I love Shadowrun because of the magic. However, it's very like the math doesn't, I can't with the math.
Yeah.
I just can't. Unfortunately, it's not a accessible game for me, but the theory, the writing, the magic, like I love that. It's just practically not an accessible game for me.
Yeah, it's pretty especially crunchy as written for sure.
Yeah. So
really quick,
yeah,
just real quick before we do that, Raffi, could you turn the sound on your phone off for us?
Oh, is there a sound thing coming?
Yeah, we're getting something like some dings.
That's so weird. I can't hear anything.
Weird.
Sorry about that. Let me see what's coming through my computer. I wonder, because my phone is on airplane mode. Sorry, guys.
No, all good.
No, you're good.
Yeah, it's just Chris, we'll make a note for the pod, and we'll just cut this little, just so the audio is as clean as possible for the pod. For Taylor and Vex, hey, how's it going, Taylor and Vex in the chat? Our friends who join us often for the chat.
Who also earlier said, "Cool game, Raffi."
I would try to figure out what's going on here.
It's all good, and if not, we can just.
No, you're good.
I don't want to.
Yeah. It's so weird because my phone is on thing, and I didn't hear those at all.
No, I mean, it must be. I don't know how it's looped into the. I mean, speaking of cyberpunk and technology and the re-enchanted
Ghost in the Machine, no,
that we don't fully understand. No, but I mean that speaks to that we don't even know in a way the data that's all around us. And so cyberpunk, I think, is a fun genre in the moment because we've hit a point where, that was something predicted in the 70s, 80s, and it was big, in the 90s at some point. But I think there was a lull where it didn't feel as lived. And now with not just like smartphones, but like information overload and also a lot of suspicion around who has access to our logins, like to my health records, to credit card data, like. What is the government aware of political activities? What do they count as a political activity? Like when we do organizing, should we use Signal? Should we use something else? Like these are really lived questions. And I think it brings cyberpunk specifically back to the fore. And then Chris and I talk a lot and, are fans of biopunk. And I think that's for different reasons with the lack of healthcare, with the kind of necro-political situation, and especially the US, even more than other parts of the global north. It just feels like these different punks, these different waves of kind of left reaction to being in a shitty situation, and telling stories about escape from that, even if the escape is ultimately Quixotean. It's like there's something punk about that, railing against the system, even if you think you're going to lose. So I think it's it's telling that these are coming back now. That's all to say, I think there's two ways to go here. We have politics and we have the weird. We have magic. So to me, I will say I've always been a fan of weird fiction, but I don't love magic because it sounds to me like this epiphenomenal thing that isn't real. And I like basing stories in the real and like what could happen with the real, but I still throw magic in my games and just call it literally like the weird. It's like, it's something that scientists are just beginning to sort of figure out. Your game takes a similar approach, but also has some elements of kind of, there's different meta-human sort of identities that are Shadowrunny, but they're based in that kind of biopunk, like, are these sort of experiments by the corpse? So I think that's one way to kind of ask a question about, like, how did you infuse your world? Like, how did you want to create this version so it's not the same as Shadowrun, but has some of that sort of near future corporate cyber fantasy almost? And then another way to talk about it is like politics and how do politics show up in the game? So we can do any version of that, but those are just things that I've been meaning to ask since we first chatted about your game.
Yeah, I love those questions. Absolutely. I think for me, magic was kind of like a no-brainer, just because for me it's just like the fact that certain things personally have happened in my life and then I'm here is just magical in general. There's no other way of explaining. Like there's certain things I'm just like, it's magic, guys. Like I don't know how to explain to you. And just like queer people in general, trans people in general, we just have that magic that I can't explain. It is there. And I wanted to have that darkness, but also that hope of something that we can't explain. Yes, perhaps is used by corporates to create more destruction, but it's also the source of a lot of hopeful things, and how we sometimes can achieve the impossible. I think just like thinking that we can achieve that transformational change just by the sheer will, or just we got to try as hard as we can. It's not a very it's just like it's bullshit. It's just like we can try as hard as we possibly can, and still it's gonna not happen. It's still not gonna be it's gonna be impossible. So I think like throwing that little extra like weird magical element that we can't explain fills that gap for me, kind of like elevates it to a storytelling element where it's like, I guess what I'm trying to avoid is kind of like this idea that we may even be like gods, right? Like if we just try hard enough, we have that power to change this thing. And I'm like, it's not necessarily in my life experience how that works. Personally, I think I think having that does that make sense? Or
yeah.
okay.
Well, I really like to. I mean, I think Wythe was asking kind of branching questions of like magic and politics, but it's interesting because in the game you bridge the two, right? Like it, even just from a kind of like staging standpoint, I've never really thought about like, Shadowrun magic or like, cyberpunk weird, or even like, thinking about Stillfleet, our own games. I've never thought about like those kind of like spaces of liminal horror as being, like anything other than terrifying, basically. But it's really interesting the way that you're framing it and saying, oh, well, it's actually a space for like generative hope to come from. It's a thing that maybe we can't control, and the corporations are tapping into it, but it's not necessarily evil, and it creates this kind of revolutionary space to grow from, which is I just a compliment, really, just interesting.
yeah but yeah, how was that? What was that? Sorry, we're going to a tangent, guys. What was the
no that's great. So and I think that's part of the backstory of the game. So for people who aren't as familiar with this specific world, it's a little bit to me reminiscent of like Altered Carbon or something, and it's pretty far future on the cyberpunk scale. So it doesn't feel as much like New York City as almost like Spire, the game, where so it's sort of this mega city, the neon spires, and below is the abyss, and the abyss is founded on this kind of magical fundament, and we're not sure exactly what it was like in its primordial state, but it's been abused by the companies, and it's all sort of hand waved in a really nice way graphically in the first couple spreads, at least to the quick start. And so we get this sense that not only are you rebelling against corporations doing a capitalism, but specifically they're being destructive to sort of the ecological basis of everything. And that feels, again, like a nice update, because I think that's not something the original cyberpunk genre was as concerned with. It wasn't as present in the mainstream of culture, in the 70s, 80s, et cetera, even the 90s. Even as, eco warriors, it was kind of like a joke, right? And they were like, oh, that's cute. They're tree huggers. Now I think it's like, oh no, this is extremely urgent. We're all going to die, So I think there's a sense of urgency there. And to me, it felt like the magic maybe is related a bit, in that it's sort of being mined or something. It's like this resource, which is nice, the sort of unobtainium metaphor. So it feels like in the game. So Raffi, one way to ask a question that maybe is again about both magic and politics is like, I'd asked this before we started playing. Does everyone have access to the weird, or like how does the weird kind of play out in your mind in the lives of people? Like, is it part of the economy? Is it part of the resistance more than the oppression? Because I to agree with Chris, I like that it's not the Lovecraftian eldritch in this game. It's like the weird is good, but it's still weird. It's like not normal human. There's something about it that's disturbing or very hard to kind of access. So if you use it, you're doing a special move. But it's interesting, at least in the quick start, I didn't get a total sense of like how weird, and how many people are doing this. So I don't know if that's a way to kind of say, can just tell us more about your game,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So when I was conceptualizing that, I asked myself that questions so many times. I'm like, okay, like, does everybody get that? Does anybody just like, if you just open yourself up, that's kind of what happens, you know? And I was just like, no, actually, I don't think so. I don't think like if you just open yourself up, then it just kind of happens, you know? Which some cyberpunk genres or like subgenres are like that. It's just kind of like if you know, just open up your mind to it. If you just like train or whatever, you can access it. I think for me, when I was conceptualizing it, I thought, oh, okay, like because the weird has that healing component from its inception, it's way more prone to approach people who are already carrying inherently those sort of values, right? Or heritages. They come from like a lineage, you know, of say freedom fighters, people who want to change the world, people who want to transform the world. That's not to say, right, that magic or the weird will not approach people who are evil or people who are greedy. It just means that it might be a little harder for them to access, but they will figure out ways of accessing it, period. You know, it's just like they will, and they do actually. But it's just one of those things. And I was thinking about it too, like, you know, just thinking of indigenous communities who, you know, are very spiritual, or some indigenous communities who are very like in touch with their land, in touch with spirituality, touch with nature. I'm thinking about my ancestors who are very, very much, you know, this is a topic made for another time, but I come from pretty big lineage of like mediums, you know, so people who are very, very much like spiritual. I think it's fair to say that those lineages of people would be way more prone to accessing, you know, magic than simply people who are far removed from that, you know, people who are so focused on the material aspect of things. So that's how I kind of approached it.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Just not being a dick is the way that you get access to magic. Just don't be a fucking fascist or a sociopath, and then you can do cool shit with magic.
Yeah. Sorry, I don't know what else to tell you. You know, it's just like.
No, it's awesome. I really, really, I really love that.
Yeah,
cool
yeah,
too. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead. I was just gonna say the neutrality thing, like, because your book emphasizes from the beginning that this isn't neutral, like, which again, I it's sort of like, yeah, why would you play cyberpunk games if you think the corporations are just the same as
neutral
as the poor people being crushed by, you know, lack of healthcare,
just a little guy,
etc. But but I think you're saying, you know, partly what I'm hearing in this, and you could you know, is that magic is not neutral. It's also not fully, like, nothing is in an uncomplicated, simplistic, sort of childish way purely good or evil. It's not a game of alignments with good and evil. It's just that people with money, like, money is kind of inherently bad in a way because it's become so, you know, over the top and equal in this future society. And magic has kind of gone the other direction, where like magic generally selects people who are more kind of empathetic and part of a community, et cetera, attuned to the living environment. So it's not all good or bad, but it's sort of generally money is bad. Generally magic is kind of, or the weird is this kind of reparative force, liberatory force. Yes. And that background feels to me more interesting, and it's grounded in like a politics I recognize, and it just sort of makes more sense than the sort of Shadowrun, like, wouldn't it be fun if a dragon ran for president? Which is like, oh, sure. Or like, oh, you're an orc, but also a samurai, but also it's modern times and you're in a mafia, but like a good mafia. And it's like, oh, okay,
you're just like a hacker.
Yeah, you're just kind of saying nouns, and that's cool. I can say nouns, but it doesn't, you know, it doesn't feel as like tied to things. So I like how you, again, you know, it feels like an update. It feels like a reason to pick up the game. Is kind of, you know, if you like those themes, this is like a good new take, right?
Yeah. Speaking of ties to things, something, Raffi, I was wondering if you could expand on. I'm really intrigued by kind of the epilogue resolution that you had teased earlier. I think you had mentioned, you know, like, how do your actions affect the community that you're in, or these corporations, things like that. So I was wondering if you could like walk us through that epilogue a little bit? Like I think it's really cool that you're taking larger kind of community and social relationships into account, because that's something that gets ignored all the time in cyberpunk genre. It's like always so individualistic and kind of replicates the worst parts of capitalist alienation. So yeah, all that's to say, I think it sounds cool, and I would love to hear more about it.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for asking. So, when you're doing the character creation, we didn't get to do this, but you usually, after you select what path you want to go to, you also select your angle, which is essentially like the reasoning behind why you run. And there are a few options you can choose from. For example, you can say, I run because I want to like transcend this world, or because I want to spark the uprising, because I want to get out, because I want to upgrade my life, because I want to learn the truth, whatever it is. You pick one of those options that like resonate more with you. And then that's going to actually come back into the epilogue. So there are two parts of the epilogue. The first part, you're gonna create a exit log. Have you played Fiasco before? Are you familiar with Fiasco?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Fiasco was definitely like a big inspiration on the first phase. So it's your digital imprint. It's the message or like confession that you choose to release into the world after your run. So it's essentially tied to your reputation. So the people that you helped along the way, the cool cinematic things that you've done, the alliances of factions that you may have created, gesture to help an NPC that maybe you thought it was irrelevant, but you were like, no, you actually did a nice thing for them. So like all those things will count as reps, and those are going to impact how far your message gets out into the world, who it reached. Maybe did it transform people? Maybe it didn't. It all depends on all your role in that. And then the second part is your angle. So your angle is like, say your angle was, I want to get out of the spires. And that's the moment where you actually have to roll. You don't roll for your message. You just like narrate, and then we're going to count your reps and see how they affect the message or not, by saying, oh, maybe it traveled, but it didn't reach everyone you wanted. Or, oh no, that didn't hit well with people. And then on your angle, which was get out, then you actually do a roll for it. So we're having two things here. We're having an individualistic part, which is why you run. And then you have the first part, which requires no roll. It's just purely narration, and it's only informed by the people you helped or didn't help. And that informs how well your message traveled after your run. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's cool. I like that a lot. Do we want to do that, or is it a little time consuming? I mean, we could do a super truncated version if you wanted.
Ooh, we could. Yeah, well, sure. Why not? Sure, why not? Back to that scene.
Yeah. We've gone down the escape hatch or whatever it is that Emra, located after we caused a bit of some confusion and got away just in the nick of time as a grenade goes off. Yep. So we've left. But I guess the roll will determine, right, how clean the escape was or whatever.
Yes. So, the shifter, Amber, right?
Emra. Yeah.
Emra. Sorry, Emra. Emra definitely got some rep points there because the move was iconic. It was really, really good. I really loved it. So the way that the exit, the way you're going to do your log, we're first going to narrate and then you roll. Okay. So the narration for you destroyed the freaking DSR there. Maybe a few prompts that you can think about is like, what changed you? Who is this message for? Or what do you hope this message will spark? or maybe even like if you want to go the opposite way, like what do you fear, this will cause? Like it depends on your character vibe, like, and then after you narrate, we roll.
Cool. Well, do we both do this, or is this something where Chris should do it because Chris kind of affected our big escape?
No, if we were in a real, like, not real, sorry, we are in a real session. If we were like in a full game, everybody would have a chance to narrate them for, I usually say you can maybe like 3 to 5 minutes to do the
Right.
one per player. Because, you have different angles, you have different reasons why you're doing the thing you're doing. So I usually want to hear them out individually.
Yeah, cool. And would this be something where we would do this every session or at the end of a major arc, like the end of either an adventure or a campaign in kind of traditional RPG speak?
Yeah, if we were having this as a one shot, then we would do it at the end. But if we were doing it as a mini campaign, which is the way I like to play it the most, about 3 to like 6 sessions or so, then we would do it at the very end.
Cool.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah. Well, take it away, Wythe.
Sure.
I'm thinking mine.
What is Kaya Parcher's message? I think her message is she's very cynical, and I think she's hacked into a lot of people. She's jacked into so many corporate goons, and most of the time they're watching porn vids or playing blackjack or whatever. Like they're not even doing evil. They're just like tuned out because they're tuned into something else. And her message is like, wake the fuck up, like this is the real world. There's the slow genocide of the people on the edges of the upper world, and the horrible deaths of the people farther below the floating corporate towers. And so that's her message, is really not even aimed at the community from which she's emerged, because she's pretty old and jaded and like has done a lot of horrible shit. It's more aimed back at the goons, if that makes sense. Like she wants to be on the news and get enough of them to be like, man, what am I doing with my life?
Yeah.
I don't know if that makes sense in this world, but that's the vibe.
Yeah, I like that. So the mission was a success, which means you got 1 die because it was a success. Do you think Kaya along this mission would have done, like either built some sort of a relationship with someone in a way that was like transformational or like kind, or like also made another iconic move? Do you think she would have a rep?
I think so. I think she's a little like the protagonist of Poker Face. Like, if you've seen that show, like I think there's like one person per run where she's like, this goon is like terrible at their job and like not evil, just like, again, kind of ignorant, and usually like kind of ends up befriending them kind of even against her will. So I think she like made a buddy who maybe then blew up in the tower. I don't know, but tried hard to like flip somebody.
I like that. So do 2 dice, and then I got my little table in here. I'm gonna see what the results are. Yeah.
Okay, great. I'm just gonna roll these dice, tell you the numbers.
Yep.
And then we'll let Chris end it, and then after that we'll close out. Okay, if that's cool with all. All right, I got a 2 and a 3. Big 2, big 3.
Okay, so 3 was the highest number. Yep. You fell short. The log was made, but maybe someone heard it, but the impact maybe was muted. So maybe like 1 or 2 people heard it, and the impact wasn't that good.
It's really tough to cut through the noise of all that porn and blackjack in the cyberpunk future.
Hey, those ads are killer.
Yeah, everywhere.
Yeah. You want duck flavored cola, duck cola. When you're fucking, drink a duck. Yeah. And it's just
but here's the thing, right? If you were doing this, then you would do another roll for your angle. So it's like it kind of balances it out. It's like this is for how you impact other people, and then after that you also have your own individual role for your angle if you were to do this fully. Does that make sense? Sure.
Yeah. Well, Chris, but Chris gets to do their piece as well.
So Emra, I've been thinking about it. Emra is a neo Marxist accelerationist, and they believe that if you can pinpoint certain crisis moments in late stage cyber capitalism, that you can accelerate the collapse and the movement towards socialism. And so that's what this mission was, is that they were trying to could you say the name of the organization again? I'm forgetting.
Oh yeah, the DESR.
Yeah, they were trying to maybe there's been a dip in the market.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. Well, that's their whole deal. They're trying to stabilize this terrible economy. I'm trying to destabilize this shit. So they're hoping that this will be the first in a long daisy chain of similar uprisings and keyword attacks on this department's facilities in order to accelerate the end of hypercapitalism.
Love. I really hope this gets through. I really do.
Yeah, me too. Me too.
Please. So at least 2 dies, right? Mission was success.
Sure.
You got around. I mean, do you think you would have done another faction alliance, or maybe just like something to an NPC?
I think if I can use that drone for multi-purpose, I think maybe Emra was also live streaming the entire heist as a way of like being like, "Hey kids, isn't it cool to blow up capitalists?"
Get it on the dice.
All right. Hell yeah. All right. Oh baby, I got a 6.
Yes. Well, the thing just cuts right through the porn, right through the casino.
Finally.
Travels clean, and it reached the people that you thought the message was important to, and even the people that maybe you weren't even considering. That even like maybe they're not transformed, but a seed of a new idea is taking root, right? Like maybe it's gonna come out.
Yeah, I love that. Beautiful. That's a good epilogue.
Yeah. Maybe we end with zooming in on one of those dumb emoji from the network we all have to use to communicate and do our mayhem as well as they do their capitalism. And it's like one of the little like Teletubby like emoji guys, and it just like rips its own head off and it's like, "I've had enough," and it just like cuts out, credits.
I love that.
Yeah, it turns out that the platform that you're describing is just Signal, used by both the government and corporations.
Well, that was fun.
That's great.
That was awesome.
So that was just a tiny piece. So the game is Echoes of the Veil. That was only a tiny little taste. That was not the full game, obviously. We didn't get to make characters. There's just no time to do a good pod version and do the interview, because we're interviewers, not AP folks. So Raffi, thanks for kind of giving us a taste and bearing with us. It was fun. Thanks for kind of teaching us your game and showing us your world. Chris, do you want to ask the traditional kind of closing question here? Close it out.
Oh my God, I've been dying to. Just kidding. Raffi, where can folks find you online? How can we best support you? What are your pluggables? How can we get this game into people's hands or into their digital libraries through PDF?
Yeah, of course. So I have a Kickstarter going on right now. It's a long URL, so maybe I can put a link in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll have a link in the show notes for sure.
Great. But yeah, if you were to go to Kickstarter and type Echoes of the Veil, it should pop up in there. I'm also I have a website. It's Reverie Rebels, like Reverie as in like dream, rebels.com. I really like to connect with people like individually. So also on Blue Sky, Reverie Rebels I do the social media. I'm there. So you will be like talking directly to me if you message me or tag me in something. We also have a Discord server that it's on the Kickstarter's FIQ. So click there, come ask me questions about the game. You can see me posting updates of graphics. Sometimes I'm just like posting the spreads that I designed, and I'm like, is this too much, or is this good? And I'm like, hey, look at this gun that I spent 8 hours drawing that I'm actually not gonna use because it doesn't look good on the spread. Like literally, this is my last post. I'm like, I spent 8 hours because I don't like drawing guns and like anything honestly with like a lot of sharp lines is not my thing. Like the buildings were like, oh god, just so hard.
I feel you on that.
Right, it's like I like the curves, I like
yeah.
the organic things,
organic shapes,
right? Like the lines are so hard, and I was like, hey, I spent 8 hours on this thing, and I'm gonna use. Do you like it? But yeah, like connect with me personally, because this is the kind of thing that I like, just especially I know we're playing cyberpunk and a lot of digital stuff, but hey, I like the connection. I like people to know who I am. I like to get to know you. I like to have these kinds of conversations. So don't be shy. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. So connect with Raffi, talk about cyberpunk, talk about making games, politics, and also shapes. Talk about shapes. So no, this is great. It's lovely to have you on, Raffi, and we would love to have you back. And in the meantime, we just rushed this out. And thanks, Chris, for working with your schedule as well this Friday. Wonderful hot Friday here on the East Coast. To support your Kickstarter. So it's entering its last week. So everyone check out Echoes of the Veil. We'll post this as soon as we can. And reverierebels.com, I think, is probably where Raffi they can find everything. Right. So that's an easier one to remember. And just Google Echoes of the Veil, it'll pop up. Raffi, anything you want to add before we close out the stream?
Yes, keep supporting these folks over here, because they were weird enough to reply to my email and be like, do you want to, they were just so nice to do that and just like took the chance. So we're like, well, maybe we'll have you on, so really appreciate that. I appreciate what Stillfleet is about, and really prioritizing and focusing on games that, like I said, are here to imagine better worlds, like radical worlds that we want to live in. It's just I think it's so important. So I commend both of you for doing it. I know it's not an easy task.
No. And we didn't get to that. We said we might get to business, so we'll have to have you back on. Maybe we'll do a little panel and talk about trying to start indie studios, and even if you have experience basically making it as an artist. We're all coming from doing some version of that, but yeah,
I like that idea. Idea. We should lock that in for an episode in the future, where maybe it's just you and I moderating. We can have like
other
Raffi,
people talk
2
about,
or 3 other people. Maybe we could have like a kind of roundtable episode if you're down, Raffi.
That's really awesome.
Maybe we could get folks from a range to some of the companies that are a little further along, and some folks who have maybe even, like, I know a lot of people have kind of given up on the idea of making money. So that's, I think, a huge part of it, is to the whole corporate dystopia part. How do you use these skills for good? So really appreciate what you said, Raffi, because we're just trying to figure it out ourselves. Yeah. So, we have our day jobs, and we're just trying to have fun making games, playing games, connecting with folks. So everyone check out reverierebels.com. Check out Echoes of the Veil. And it's true, we're all weird. So we'll see you on Zed, the Anything Bot. No, that's not true. That app doesn't exist yet. But we'll see you all in the future on Why We Roll. And thanks to everyone who watches or listens to the show.
Thanks, everybody.